The night of July 4th, my family and I celebrated the evening with the displays of fireworks. It was coming near to an end at around 9:30 p.m., so we all decided to come home from dinner. As we were all chatting away and so forth, our doorbell rang. The strange part was we all had our black metal screen door closed only, while our front door was wide open, so whoever rang the doorbell would have been spotted quickly. I went to check, but there was no one there at all. About 10 to 15 minutes after ringing the doorbell, my parents received a call from our uncle. He told us that his wife had just passed away, and he wanted my parents to come over. I put the pieces together and figured that it must have been our aunt who came to visit us, which explained the strange doorbell ringing. From what I heard and was told, my aunt and uncle went camping to celebrate July 4 with other relatives. On the 4th of July at camp, my aunt kept seeing this tiger-like creature roaming around the trees near their camping place. Thinking it might have been some other camper's pets, she just ignored it. However, she started feeling lightheaded and weak when they were all getting ready to come home. On the road home, the tiger-like creature suddenly sprang in front of their cars at least a good 50 feet away or so from them. One of my relatives decided to get his rifle and shoot at it, but it ran off after he missed twice. My aunt came home to rest, but she kept growling in a low tone every now and then in her sleep. What worried my uncle was when she would start growling and the back of her eyes rolled back. She told my uncle to give her some raw and uncooked meat because she was hungry. During the funeral, one of my uncle's son went home to grab pillows and bring back some boiled chickens from home. As he gathered the stuff, he noticed that some of the drumsticks from the chickens were missing, like someone ripped it off. He then asked his family to see if anyone came home that night and did anything to the chickens, but they all said no. At the funeral, uncooked meat and pieces of chickens suddenly went missing. The son then dreamt later that night that at the funeral, it was his mom who ate the drumstick because she was hungry, and that his dad is mean because he didn't feed her uncooked meat when she asked for it. Exactly 13 days after the funeral, my uncle received a call from my aunt. All my uncle heard was his name being called and growling on the other end. Then, my aunt told my uncle that she became a tiger and for him not to worry about her. So during my college days, I had a friend who we will refer to as K, whose favorite joke was that he had a dead girlfriend. Well, at first, no one thought too much of it. We just ignored it because it was a dumb thing to say regardless of justification. But about a year after my friends and I moved out of the dorms, Kay joined us as roommates. About 1.5 years of being roommates with Kay, I had this weird dream. In the dream, my roommates and I were all busy playing Dota. From where I was playing in the dream, I was close to the windows, I could hear something moving outside, and I figured that it was someone coming to visit. So I walked to the door and checked to see who it was via the peephole. This part is strange because the real apartment door didn't even have a peephole. I saw what seemed to be a mix between a tiger and a woman. Before I knew it, the tiger lady was trying to force her way in, and by instinct I was pushing against the door to keep her out. I remember calling out for my roommates to come down to help me so we could lock the deadbolt. We all pushed against the door with all our might, and we all tried to twist the deadbolt shut. It was hard because the lady on the other side was pushing even harder than us. Eventually, we were able to hold her off and twist the deadbolt. But then, there was a loud bang in the dream and I woke up. So I'm not sure if we were ever actually able to lock it. About a week after this dream, everything got a bit stranger. My roommates and I just found it tremendously hard to stay in Kay's room. The room was cold and dark. He started to turn off the lights while surfing the net, and it just felt like someone was telling you to get out because you were invading its space. During that same week, I had more dreams about the tiger woman, but there was a particular dream that scared me. In the dream, I had woken up and was walking to our living room area. In the dream, I thought it was weird because it was just me. I remember looking towards Kay's room, and this time, she was inside Kay's room. Before I knew it, there was a loud screech like she was giving me a head start, and before I knew it, she was chasing me. My gut reaction was to run towards the door. The door is almost directly in line with Kay's door, and when I got there, I realized I had to twist the deadbolt. So I started trying to twist the deadbolt, but I was fumbling it. No matter what I did, it just wouldn't twist all the way, and before I knew it, there was a hand on my shoulder. All I felt was a big tug, and I fell to the ground. Even though I felt it was pointless, I struggled and tried to crawl back towards the door, clinging to carpet with both my fingers and mouth. I remember her saying in Hmong, "Chota, you're a tough one, aren't you?" Alas, her grip was stronger than mine, and she was able to pull me towards Kay's room. I remember as I was being dragged into his room on my back, I saw her, and she was wearing red and grinning at me. When I saw her grin, I decided I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction, so I flipped her the bird. As I passed through the opening of his door, I woke up. About a week after that dream, the instances with the red lady occurred. I got home from class early, so I decided I was going to take a nap. When I woke up from the nap, it was already 8 p.m. and it was dark outside. So I walked out to the living room area and talked to my roommate there. After a couple minutes of chatting, I asked if Kay was back or not. He said he didn't know because he just got back. So I decided to check up on Kay. I cracked his door open a bit and let the living room light come in. I saw blankets covering someone and loud breathing, so I told my roommate, "Yeah, he's in there sleeping." About 20 minutes of surfing the net, I hear the doorbell ring. I opened the door and my heart started to sink and my blood turned cold. I had opened the door and found myself wondering what the heck and looking directly at Kay. In the previous house that my family and I used to live in, I believed it was haunted, or it could have been one of those reoccurring spirits who was after my mom and was later after my siblings and I. One night, I decided to give my son a bath, and after his bath, I put him into his red Elmo pajamas. I thought I better let him be active for the moment until he decides to fall asleep, so I left into the living room to watch some more night shows. As I was watching TV for a while, I was thinking of why I haven't seen my son or heard him at all. From the part of the living room where I was at and facing, if you turn your head to the right, you can see through the dining room into the hallways. There were 3 bedrooms to the right and 2 bedrooms to the left. My room was down to the furthest right, and the first 2 rooms were both of my elder brothers. The farthest room down to the left was the master bedroom, which was my parents' haunted bedroom, and the first bedroom onto the left belongs to my youngest brother. At the time, my son was only at the age of 2, so as I was thinking, I decided to yell out my son's name, and after calling it out 2 or 3 times, I saw my son. He was walking slowly across my parents' bedroom to my bedroom and slammed the door shut. I was thinking to myself, since when did my son learn to close the door knowing that he wouldn't be able to open it himself? I called out his name, and as I was about to get up from the couch, my son actually came out from my younger brother's room, which was the first bedroom on to the left. I was shocked and freaked out of my mind. I fell back onto the couch and instantly knew that the baby I saw walking from my parents' bedroom into my room was not my son, but instead a ghost. A few years ago, there were 2 guys named Thu and Su. They both went to the same church as we did. One day, a group of the youth members decided to go hang out at the beach together. Thu and Su also went with the group, so the young kids decided to go swimming. Then, all of a sudden, a big wave came over and took a few guys out. Thu and Su were two of the unlucky ones who couldn't be saved. Everyone felt so helpless while watching all the search teams look for them. As everyone waited on the beach for the two guys, the parents of Su, even though we're Christians, went to go seek help from a shaman. The shaman said that it's dragon season, and that dragons of the sea has taken their lives because in their past life, Thu and Su were lovers that committed to each other, and in this life, Su had a girlfriend that he was truly in love with. The spirits didn't want him and his girlfriend to be together, so that was why the two guys drowned and passed away. A few weeks later, their bodies washed ashore, and the families held a ceremony and buried them. So, some quick information. Dragons in the Hmong culture aren't always your typical reptilian lizard creature. In fact, they also refer to any spirits that reside in bodies of water. This story was a little confusing, but still entertaining nonetheless. Back in Thailand, there lived an old man and his daughter. They didn't have much money, so the old man asked around for work. One day, he told his daughter that he had finally found some work for them and that the boss would pay them a lot. But it's at a farm isolated and far away from their village, so they would have to go stay at that farm until the season was over. They both agreed and traveled to the farm. This farm had two different sections, so the old man would work in one large section while his daughter worked on the other, and there was a small hut available for the both of them. Every morning, they both would wake up and go their separate ways to farm, and when dark fell, they would return to the hut. This went on for several weeks, and the daughter soon became lonely from the isolation. One day, while farming, she said to herself, "Why am I so lonely? There's no friend around to talk to for fun at all." That night, when she was about to fall asleep, someone started knocking on her side of the wall. "Miss, have you already fell asleep?" The charming man behind the wall asked. She then replied, "No, I haven't. And who are you with the charming voice?" "Well, I saw you this morning and thought you might be lonely, so I decided to come talk to you." Because she was so lonely, and because she was drawn to his charming voice, she continued to talk to him. Since that encounter, he continued visiting her every night, and their relationship soon turned into love. Weeks passed, and she would hassle about seeing each other face to face, but he refused to visit her, explaining that he was afraid of her father. One day, she finally says to him, "You know, we've been talking for so long now, and I still haven't seen your face. When will I ever get a chance? But I'm afraid if you see my face, you might not like me anymore. Your voice is so sweet. No matter if you are handsome or not, I will still love you." But he kept refusing. "Then, can you at least give me your hand so I could touch them?" He slipped his hand through the thatch wall, and she held it tightly. Without him knowing, she tied a string of yarn to his sleeve and said to him, "Okay, I'm done. Well, good night. I'll talk to you tomorrow." The next morning, she got up and the first thing she did was follow the string of yarn that she had tied to his sleeve. She followed it past the farm, over the hill, to the next village, and back under her bed. Horrified, she runs to her father and tells him that she wanted to go back home as soon as possible, but never mentioned her secret boyfriend to him. Her father says to her, "Daughter, the season is almost over. Let's finish it so we can get our money and just go." "But Dad, I hate this place. Can't we just leave?" "No, the boss says he'll pay a lot if we work here, since no one was willing to come here and take care of his farm." "Why not, Dad?" "Well, because this place used to be a gravesite." This is just my own story of my encounter with spirits. I used to live in Cali dating back to 1997. I was just 5 years old and we were living in a small apartment in Stockton. I, for one, did not believe in ghosts back then until my encounter that year. The night before the event happened, my brothers and sisters and cousins were outside playing tag and talking about things. At that time, I was inside making rice because I was a little chubby kid who was always hungry. No one would make rice so late around 11 p.m. My parents would leave the door wide open while they sat in the living room talking to my aunts and uncles. While I was trying to figure out how to make rice, my parents looked over their shoulders at who was making all that noise over at the kitchen. To their surprise, they found a little fat chubby kid trying to remember how the rice was made. My aunts and uncles chuckled and said if I keep it up at that rate with all the noise that I was making, someone else will be making the entire ruckus too. At the time, I didn't get it, but I actually made the rice. It wasn't very successful, but I still made it. After I was done, I had to wait until the rice cooker was done cooking the rice, so I decided to go outside to play with all the regular old kids, playing hide-and-seek tag in the dark as well. Although I was not in the best of shape, I was still able to at least be the person who was overlooked the most since I was also very short. When it was my turn to hide, I ran to hide behind a set of bushes that were near a wooden fence. To get to it, however, you had to go through a small hole that was just enough to fit a smaller person. Earlier, I saw that someone was able to go through the fence with no problem, so I could do that too. My stubbornness to not be it kicked in and I decided at all costs to try to fit through the hole, even if it costed me my life. Ironically, what awaited me could have done the same thing. I pushed and pulled, and finally I magically popped through. I crouched and giggled to myself that I will never be found at this rate. And then a slightly cold breeze blew from my right, which forced me to turn my head to the left. There was a dark figure standing, looking through a hole in the fence. At that moment, I started getting the chills. However, seeing that I was a little kid, I didn't know any better. So, I went to stand right beside the figure and was wondering what it was looking at. All of a sudden, I overheard one of my girl cousins saying that she saw a red eye looking at her through the fence. I found it hilarious that it was me and the figure playing a prank on them to scare them. It was all fun and games until I started looking at how the figure was dressed. Its hair was very long and fuzzy, while it was wearing Hmong clothes that was meant for a man with a red waistcloth. I started freaking out when it slowly turned towards me. I started backing away slowly and tried to make my way to the hole. It turned to me with its bloodshot red eyes that pierced through my soul and sent chills down my body. I started to run on my short stubby legs towards the hole and tried to squeeze through this time again, but it was stuck. I started yelling for help and it seemed like all hope was lost when I felt the cold hands grab a hold of my legs and slowly try to pull me back out. I was so scared that I started crying and yelling out my older brother's name. Someone noticed my yelling and was running towards me. I thought I was safe, but it turned out to be my younger cousin who was still picking her nose. She was laughing at me because I had snot and tears all over my face. I thought that all hope was lost because I felt that I was slowly being pulled the other way. It was over, I thought. There was nothing I could do to save myself anymore, until the almighty stomach kicked in and I let out a huge stinky fart. That's when all the pulling and coldness stopped completely. My older brother finally came over and pulled me to safety. I grabbed onto him as strong as I could and cried into his arms and wiped everything onto him as punishment for being slow. He took me home and told my parents. They thought that I was just being a kid and maybe someone was pulling a trick on me. My mom gave me a hot plate of food that I ate up and was happy the next minute. I went to sleep at the same time that everyone did. I slept on the same bed as my older brother and fell asleep fast when he let me sleep against the wall, the safest place. The next morning, I woke up to a breeze from the window that my sisters and brothers opened. I was still sleepy, but I suddenly felt a tremor. The temperature was slightly getting colder, and I immediately hid under the blankets. I just knew deep down what was coming. The door was closed, windows opened, and no one in the room to save me this time. I did not want to yell in case it knew where I was, but then again, it wasn't hard to tell. I closed my eyes at first and then opened them. There it was, standing there at the door looking right at me. I could not see anything but a dark figure. I started crying and bickering how I knew that this was it. I could not possibly survive this one. It started walking closer to me, and its figure was growing even more. That's when my older brother opened the door and jumped on me. He started yelling at me to get up and go eat because our mom baked a whole chicken. The figure disappeared entirely at that moment, and I was saved again. I never spoke of it this time. Instead, I ran out first and went to grab my plate of food. I was so happy that I forgot it at that time. However, this time, I remembered it for sure. The funny thing was that I went to church with my brother and them the next day. At the time, we were still shamans, but I needed a change. That's when I finally found my faith in God. Proud to say I could have been the first converted in my family. Ever since then, I attended church, and when the pastor placed his hands on my head and spoke the holy words, I never once saw anything again. It was like angels came down and covered my eyes and hid me from them. To this day, my belief is probably still the same, but my families have all converted. This was my story and how my encounter brought me to my faith. It's not that the old way was not enough, but everyone is different, and this was my story. Since I've been reading many stories about people being sat on by ghosts and sleep paralysis, I will tell you all of my experience. I come from a family that is involved with a lot of spiritual things. Being sat on is a natural thing in my family. I've experienced sleep paralysis countless times, but there was one time where my tears actually came out. One night, when I was falling asleep, I saw a very tall figure at my door. I thought I was dreaming, so I decided that I would try to close my eyes to see if the 6-foot-tall black figure will go away. I closed my eyes, but when I reopened it, guess what? He was standing right by my bedside, staring down at me. All this was happening when my brother was still next to me, talking to his girlfriend on the phone. I tried screaming his name, but I was frozen and I wasn't able to scream or move. I decided the only way to get from him was to try to go to sleep again, so I did. I fell asleep and, for some odd reason, I woke back up. When I rubbed my eyes, I saw a little boy with a straw hat walking through my door dragging a cow with bells tied around the cow's neck. When I saw the boy moving closer to me, the pressure on me was tighter and I couldn't move a single muscle. As soon as the boy stopped right by my bedside and stared at me, there were 2 ghostly arms that came through my window and laid its hands on my chest. The hands were cold and it was pulling my spirit away from my body. I literally saw my spirit come out of my body, and then my tears came out. I was thinking to myself, is it really time to die already? After a few tears came out of my eyes, I decided it was not my time to die yet, so I started to move little by little. Soon, my feet were free. Then, my whole body became free. The little boy disappeared, and I saw the arms from my window go away. From that day, I just didn't care about it anymore. If I see them come, then I just did my best to ignore it. This story was told to me by an old lady at an event. It will be told in the first person, which makes it easier. There was news on the TV about 2 young American girls who went missing. That's when she told me her story. Back in Laos, when I was still 18, there weren't many missing kids like here in the US, but when there were kids missing, people encountered them as ghosts. One day, a little girl at the age of 8 who lived in my town went missing. Her parents and people of the town went searching for her, but there were no trace of her at all. She was walking back home from school, but never made it back. She wasn't found, so everyone moved on with their life, and her parents decided to move to another little town. 2 months later, I was walking to the garden by myself, since I was too lazy to wake up early to go with my family. I was walking, and in the far distance, I saw a little girl standing by a tree. She was wearing a school uniform, so I didn't think too much about it. I thought that, oh, maybe school is over and kids are coming back. As I got closer, the little girl looked very dirty. Her clothes were ripped and torn, and she had mud all over her. Still, I didn't think much, because little kids play with dirt most of the time anyways. As soon as I walked past her, I heard a sobbing noise, and all the hair on my body stood right up. I looked back, and the sobbing stopped. Something in my guts just told me to ask the little girl if anything was wrong and why she was there and if she needed any help. The little girl replied that she can't find her mom and dad and that she is scared. So I asked her where she lives and why is she here all alone. Surprisingly, she lived in my town, and I told her that I'll take her back and later I'll walk to the garden. So I grabbed her hand and walked with her back to the town. But she was cold. Her little hand was cold and dirty. As soon as we got into town, I asked her about where she lives, and she pointed to the abandoned house of the little girl who went missing. I told her, "You live there? No one lives there." I looked at her and she smiled back and said, "I'm finally home. I've been so tired waiting to come back." Right there and then, my whole body felt heavy, and thoughts of the little girl who went missing filled my mind. I freaked out, put the little girl on the rock, and asked her to stay put and ran to a close-by neighbor's house to ask for help. I told them that I found a little girl and that she's sitting on the big rock. As soon as we looked back there was no one but a log on top of the rock. I was speechless. About a month ago, me, my best friend, and her sister started watching these Ouija videos. We were a bit scared, but still wanted to try out to see if these things really work. We made our own board and printed out instructions. We started asking if anyone was there. There was no answer. We stopped after trying about 27 times. We then found out that there was a Buddha in the drawer, so we decided to try it outside at the back of the house. It worked, a little bit. First, we talked to a demon named David. We asked him many questions like how he died and if he was a good spirit. When we tried asking him how old he was, we didn't even have time to finish the question, and then he answered 666. We were so shocked that my best friend went to the goodbye sign without saying anything, and then she ran away. She came back, and then we played again. This time, we came in contact with a spirit of a girl. Her name was Dara. We asked how old she was, but it was unclear. All we know is that she wrote a 4, and then a 5, 6, and 7. We asked her if she was 47, and then my best friend started laughing. But it was not her laugh. It was as if something was possessing her and laughing. Her voice was different. Her sister and I both ran away, and then later we went back to see where my best friend was. We saw her sitting there and crying. She asked why did we leave her alone. We just took the board and the glass cup and walked back together. A few days later, her sister came back with a real Ouija board this time. It was from Germany. It was so big that we actually started laughing the first time. We weren't allowed at the back of the house anymore, so we decided to play on the balcony. When we asked the spirit if anyone was there, it raced to the sign, yes, and then it fell off the board. We asked if we had better connection from up there, then it did it again. We spoke to many spirits and found out that there is a master and that the spirit is inside the board. We also found a way to tickle it. You just have to tap the pointer. One spirit's name was Suzanne, which was the exact same name my best friend has. We asked how old it was and for the last name and how many sisters she has. It was like there was another life. We also asked if there was a Jennifer like me and if I was dead. It said I got skinned alive and hung up in a closet, just like the Smith sisters. Another spirit said that the master wanted to kill Suzanne and train her. It said she had a special power, and we found out that was why they were going to take her. That's when we didn't want to play it anymore. There were also some funny spirits and cute ones too. One boy's name was Daniel. He was 3 years older and died because he fell off the stairs. He said he misses his mom. When we asked him how he died, the planchette moved off the board. We figured that he didn't want to spell it out for us. Then there was another boy who said his name was Google. We asked where he came from, and he said the internet. We asked what language he speaks, and he said Wikipedia. After we talked to him, we found out that heaven is just like the normal world, and that it has streets and cities and countries, but they don't have the same names. What they actually did was put two real street names together, and that would be a heavenly street. The board said that Ouija won't work for anyone anymore without Suzanne for the whole world. Interesting story, but take it with a grain of salt.